And lastly, Celiacs likes to start our programs off sometimes with some guided breathing. For time's sake, I'll just invite you to do one quick deep breath in and out so that we can land here together. To conspire literally means to breathe together. So here we are conspiring to build that more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. And we also like to start with a quote. So just to keep in mind that we should never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. That from Margaret Mead. And so with that, I have the honor and the pleasure to introduce our guest presenter, Dr. John Shribbs of, if I can end my screen share, of ReLeaf Petaluma, among many other projects and works. So John, I pass the microphone and the screen share over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just go ahead and start sharing here in a second. Let's go ahead to share. And let's go this one and share. Okay, so
Turn the fan off, would you?
I don't get to see everybody, and I don't get to see the chat, but I'm just going to go right through. But if you could go ahead and let me know if there is something I need to answer, then we can open it up for discussions right along the way, if you like. All right, so I got asked to talk about trees and tree care, especially during this droughty times, because we're right now in Petaluma in stage 4. And I tried to find out, I thought, well, stage 4 was one of the most severe. No, we have all the way up to stage 6. And I couldn't quite figure out all what that 6th stage was. But as you progress up, it gets more and more severe as for water expectations and water use and how to minimize how you use your water. And there's a website out there that I've gone to several times. It's called Save Our Water and Our Trees. It's called saveourwater.com/trees. So if anybody wants to go there, that's the first reference site to get deeper into details about what to do and how to do it. Let's see if I can go down, page down. Let's see if I can go ahead and go to the next page. There it is. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I do have a PhD in horticulture, but I didn't take that many horticulture classes. Ended up, I did a lot of biology, ecology, statistics, but I did my thesis on apple trees and ground cover management, and that's where I really got into looking at root systems. So my thesis was a lot about interactions in the roots of trees and how they interact with the soil environment. So I became a little bit of a soil scientist for a little while there. But that was many years ago, but I've been interested in trees the whole time and done a lot of work with trees since then. I worked with a chemical company for about 12 years doing patent research type stuff. I'm working with the evil empire out there, but I've changed my ways after I started teaching high school, especially environmental science and physical science in high school. So I've crossed the line over and now I'm total green. But I've retired about 6 years ago, and I've done a lot of volunteer work then in various places. I'm now chair of the Petaluma Tree Advisory Committee. I guess that was the main reason I was asked this, but also president of Petaluma Wetlands Alliance and Schollenberger Park. So if you go out there, a lot of work that's going on there. I help work with the group. We have 140 members now doing all sorts of things with us. We started a new group called ReLeaf Petaluma. It was just in the paper this last week, talking about the 10,000 Tree Initiative. And then I'm also involved with the general plan and the groundwater and watersheds that are going on now, and community gardens here at St. James and across the street, the Landscape Assessment District. And they just asked me that I'm helping out the horticulture class at Casa Grande right now. I was just over there a couple hours ago, pulling out stumps of bushes out of to make way for fig tree. So that's what I was doing the last couple hours. And this morning I was cleaning out owl boxes over at Ellis Creek. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing now. And what I'd like everyone to learn or walk away with today, here's the main concepts. As a teacher, I says, tell them what you're going to teach. And at the end, review what you're going to teach and make sure everyone got it. So these are the main concepts. And if you already know all of these things, then heck, you could probably go have some dinner. But I'll hopefully go a little bit deeper in each of these concepts. But trees have many benefits, and I'll be going over some of those. There are no tree planting during severe drought. at this time, actually, you're not allowed to plant trees, but what they don't mention, which I think is allowable, unless you have access to recycled water or a gray water delivery system. And you can use your, either you have special drains like the Daily Axe is setting up, lots of work right now on gray water systems. I want to go to one of those myself. Or setting up some sort of bucket system, or carrying out your containers from your shower, your tub, and your dish washing and laundry. If you get your water out to the yard, that's what we're doing now. If you're going to have young trees, maybe you planted it last year, but they're still young, 1 or 2 years old, and they need 5 to 10 gallons per week on average. There's different numbers out there from different organizations, and these are like ballpark figures, plus and minus it based on the size of your tree, the health of your tree, how you're feeling about it, the soil that you have. But on average, about 5 to 10 gallons per week for a young tree. As the larger trees get older, they need more water. There's a lot more transpiration going on in that leaf mass, the canopy upstairs. So maybe up to 30 gallons every 2 weeks, or 100 gallons per month per tree. And the way you kind of figure out, well, what's 100 gallons? How do you do that? How do you measure 100 gallons per month? What does that mean? Well, it turns out your hose bib puts out about 10 gallons per minute without a hose nozzle on it. And depending upon your hose nozzle, some of them are 10 gallons per minute, some are 5 gallons, and some, the low flows, are 2 gallons per minute. So once you know which nozzle you have and how much output, if it's a full hose at 10 gallons per minute, okay, time it, 10 minutes, that's 100 gallons. You got your golden. So have a little stopwatch, use your phone, do a stopwatch, and water your trees. And when you do water trees, the whole point is not to drench them and flood the whole area, but you water them slow, water them deep. And that's the key. Not often, opposite of lawns. Lawns like lots of water very frequently, almost every day. And that's what lawns love. And trees and lawns are sitting there, and the lawn is soaking up most of the water, and the water never gets deep unless you really overwater it. But you want to water slow, and you want to water deep, and you don't want to, and you want to get away from your lawn concept of what lawns need, and your trees just need it infrequently. The next step is caring for your trees, mulch. And usually I'm recommending 3 to 4 inches on the most part. Some folks think, well, let's put it up to 6 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches is even better. No, that causes problems. So try to maximize at 4 inches, but 3 to 4 inches with some sort of mulch. Wood chips are fine. And I believe that even leaves, especially if you grind up their leaves right now and put them through some sort of mesh or something, and then put them back on the ground, that works just great. In fact, that's even better if you want to grow insects. Insects love the leaves mat on the ground. That's normal forest organic matter. Wood chips are second best, but that's very common and work very well. I'll tell you a little bit about what the problems you're going to have if you do more than 3 or 4 inches. And you want to reduce your pruning. So everyone says, oh, okay, I want to get out there and minimize the transpiration. I'll take out a lot of branches. No, let the tree sit. Damaging the tree stresses the tree. Minimize the pruning at this time. If it's dead wood, you can always remove dead wood at any time. That's not going to do anything to the tree. But live wood, at this time, I'd say less than 10%. Not until it rains enough and the trees recover. Even through this winter, I say minimize your pruning until you see what leaves out at next spring. And then if you need to do some pruning, then when you figure out which branches have survived best. And that's going to be key this year. And depending upon how much rain we get and how much drought, weather folks are saying 1 full more year of drought. It's going to be a real winger this year. And I'm really surprised we're getting rain right now, because this is unusual to get, we're predicting some rain over this next couple weeks. Next concepts, natives are much better than non-natives for many reasons, one of which is just for the ecology. We now have learned that natives grow insects, which then are food for birds. So if we want a population of birds and chipmunks and have possums and even skunks and wildlife in our urban area, you got to have your natives. And a lot of research has gone in to show that there's a huge deficit, because we brought in all these non-natives because they're insect-free, beautiful leaves, no insect damage, no fungicide, no fungi damage on them, no pathogens, beautiful green leaves. They feed nobody, and they kills the whole ecology of the area. So all these beautiful wonderful disease-free, insect-free plants, terrible for the local ecology. And that's why we want to plant natives and grow insects, and have a 10% damage is great. That's actually showing we're in a good state of ecology. When you get 10 to 20% damage, that's fine. Then, and there's various types of trees you can have, even in amongst your natives. There's some trees that are riparian trees that require lots of water. And so even amongst the natives, you want to move toward more upland trees, especially in your front yards and backyards. If you're away from the creeks, if you're closer to a creek, your backyard's right next to a creek, then maybe you can move to more riparian type trees. Turns out in our area, oak trees are, especially the ones in the white oak family, there's red oak family and white oak family. And the ones in the white oak family are better for diversity of reasons. When they do sequester carbon, they're one of the best ones for sequestering carbon over a long period of time, good growth rates. They have low water needs. They have biodiversity of providing lots of insects and birds live in those trees. And they, and sudden oak death, they're a little bit more resistant. And lastly, I'm hoping that we have a little bit of time. We'll talk about preparing your home and landscape for wildfires. There's a lot of information out there. And some of the sites I've seen is like, okay, those sites are designed for the folks out there in the rural lands. Well, what about us here in the city? What can we do for wildfire protection? I got a tree near me. I got to get rid of it. It's going to be a burning. It's going to be a burning bush. It's going to destroy my house. No, we can relax a little bit. We have a lot more resources here, urban, and not the same policies as what's happening in the rural areas. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But that's what I'm teaching today. And so now I'm going to go through and carry you through. Okay, benefits of trees. Lots and lots of benefits. And from various sites I've looked at, I'm estimating that a good large tree on your property gives property value alone of about $5,000 increase in value of your home, just having those large trees compared to your house next door, identical house, without any large trees. You actually have a lot easier sale pitch. So economically, it's of high value to maintain your trees. Lawns you can replace real fast, but a 30-year-old tree like I have in the front on my street, not easy to replace in even 10 years. It takes 30 years to grow a good big tree. So there's all sorts of benefits here. I've listed them here. You can take a quick look. I think on the recording, when you go back and you can take a look at each individual one, but there's lots of sites out there. Look up benefits of trees. Ecology, financially, conservation of energy, shading that you get from production of oxygen. Removes toxins from the atmosphere, especially around the freeway. We really need lots of trees around our freeways here in Petaluma. That's why I'm supporting the 10,000 tree proposal. They removed 900 trees. We need to get a couple thousand trees to replace the 900 redwoods they took away. They did a lot to prevent noise pollution and also toxin pollution. Trees actually are really good at that. Okay, so when it comes to drought and trees, what people don't, they look at the top and they really don't, nobody knows, very few people have seen roots or dug down there in the root system, but it's all about the roots. There's actually probably close to at least 30%, if not 75% of the actual mass of the tree is underground. And there's a lot of myths out there, what those roots look like, what they do, and how they function. Turns out roots are really important. They give structural support. They give lots, you can gather all your water. You need nutrients, particularly your macros, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Lots of micronutrients are required through the ground and from the rocks as they break down. And what I think a lot of people recognize now, there's a symbiosis with fungi in this rhizosphere. And what the fungi do is they have a lot larger tendril system, a lot finer tendrils that are sticking out and spreading throughout the soil and are in a lot more cracks and crevices than the tree roots can get to. And so there's a little bit of a symbiosis of an agreement between the two. The fungi said, oh, I'm really good at picking up phosphorus because I could wrap myself around all these soil particles and I pick up phosphorus real easy, and you have a hard time doing that. So I'll tell you what, tree, I'll give you phosphorus and you give me some carbon because I don't have light. And so you give me the carbon with your light and I'll trade you some phosphorus and let's be symbiotic and let's be friends. And so you want to have a really good soil environment, and you don't want it dead. A lot of folks have this dead stuff all around their trees, and it's just bare ground. Bare ground is dead dirt. That's not good for the trees. So there's lots of chemical and biotic interactions. Trees put out lots of exudates. They both feed what's underground. They feed all those organisms intentionally because they want that because the more biomass you have and the more organisms you have, the more nutrients are flowing throughout the entire system. And most of the root mass turns out is going to be the top foot or two in the top soil horizon, like what's called the A horizon. There's organic matter on top, then the A horizon, which is the most fertile part of it. And then you get deeper down into the more the rockier and the bedrock down below. That's the B, C, and then finally the deep rocks. But they're going to be in that top couple feet here for the most part. And you can see all the different things that there's both a living and non-living partitions within the soil, and it's all happening down there in the soil. And the water's got to be part of that. There's could be up to 30% of soil, the top layers is airspace, and it can be filled with water or filled with air, and that's where the roots go and where all the organisms lives and all that airspace. There's huge airspace in soil, and organisms make that airspace. Earthworms are wonderful. Okay, so roots are very, very important. So a lot of folks, if you go to the roadsides, this is what a real typical tree root looks like. You see your soil types up here. Here's your top is your organic matter right at the top. Then right below here, you can sort of see an A horizon that's a little darker, a little bit more fertile. A lot more organisms have lived there, much more organic matter from all of the earthworms that have pooped and all the gophers that are mixing it up. And as you go down, a little less disturbed, and it goes into the B layer, the C layer, and then there's a fine lens down here where the bottom of the C layer is, and then you start getting into more like bedrock down below. And the roots are going to be spread out throughout the area. And there's all sorts of different types of roots and support roots and the like that are coming out, lateral roots, and what the roots do, and they extend way out. So, and there's a few tap roots that go down deep. In fact, there will be a few of these that will go find water down deep, but not many. It's not all the roots, just a few roots will be sent down deep. So trees are very intelligent. They look for the nutrients in the water, and they actually intentionally send their roots. They can detect, and they will send their roots out to the nutrients. They'll send their roots out to where they can find water. And they also look at this concentric pattern that you see here as the roots are spreading out throughout the entire base. So it's really interesting structures out there. Okay, so tree roots, most folks look up here and you can see that this is some of the diagrams that, this is actually a tattoo artist diagram showing you some, in theory, what roots might look like. It says, no, absolutely not, please. That's a myth. These roots over here, okay, this is a little bit more realistic. Roots are spreading out, but probably not as thick as you see out here. There's a little bit better diagram that you see here, where the roots are down and small little tendrils are sticking all the way out, very, very far out, up to 3 times the actual drip line of the tree. And that's where they're absorbing, and that's where they compete with other plants, other trees, and actually communicate. Roots will connect with other tree roots, and they talk to each other. If you look at the planet Pandora with all the trees interconnecting and intelligence, that idea was actually here from our redwoods. Our redwoods actually communicate with each other. They found out and they actually send signals back and forth to each other. So roots are very important. You have feeder roots, you have critical root zone, but anyway, it's this top layer in here. And where do you want to put your water? Not here at the trunk. You want to put your water way out here, where the roots are actually, where the absorption is actually happening with the smaller root systems. That's the drip line and even further out. There's many different types of roots. Up here, you have tap roots that go straight down. In fact, if you plant an oak tree, the best way to plant an oak tree is take an acorn and put it in the ground and let that tap root come out of that acorn and go straight down. As soon as you put that acorn into a container, and it's a 5-gallon, a 15-gallon, and it ends at the bottom of the container, and it goes wrap, 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 wrap right around the bottom of the container. And then you plant your tree, and it continues to wrap and doesn't keep going straight down. And then finally, eventually, it figures planting an acorn within 5 years will outgrow anything you plant in 1, 5, or even a 15-gallon tree. An acorn will outgrow a 15-gallon container. So if you can plant acorns, that's actually the best way to plant oak trees. So you have lateral roots, you have heart roots that kind of extend out and come out. That's support structure that will, so that the tree can go with the wind. And there's actually a lot of the veins in the tree turn, twist for support. You have lateral roots that go out, and these are where the absorption really happens. The lateral roots tend on out, a little bit of support, but basically you have all these fine tendrils come out, and eventually, and sometimes there's sinker roots that oh, there's water over here. Oh, there's a ravine, there's a creek. I'll send down a little sinker root into those areas. And this is where this is where the real ecology, this is where you want to put your water, out here, where these fine roots are. Okay, then you've got root problems. When you confine roots in any way, down here, you have a tree that was in a container at one time, and it got wrapped around in that container. The roots ended up circling that container, and it got planted in the ground. And this is what happens to that tree. It slowly, basically suffocates, wraps around itself, suffocates itself, can even hurt itself, and then it falls over because it doesn't have the support system in it. When you put cement around trees, and especially a large tree like this, and there's you see how much wind, like a kite, is just grabbing the wind and it can pull it right out of the ground. That's happens here. That happens quite often when you don't have. This is a problem in all around towns when you have street trees, and street trees are commonly constricted in these roots. That's why we try to help the street trees, particularly, are a little different from trees in your lawn, and how you water them and how to maintain them. You want to give them a little bit more extra nutrients and water out to the sides, especially if you give it lots of room on the sides. When you put two big trees in small spots, not a good sign. If you've got an area like this where you have tree roots, a lot of damage, a lot of people stepping on this, a lot of lawnmower damage is happening. You don't put mulch on that. You put soil first, and then you put mulch on top. You want to protect these areas. If you put mulch on top, maybe they get too wet, and disease can get into these areas here. So if you have this, put a little soil on top first, then add your mulch. And tree roots, they can be hazardous, they can be problems. Tree roots can get inside tubes of various sites and completely fill them up. Willow trees are highly known for this. Okay, the planting a tree. Hopefully most folks have planted the trees that are attending and know how to do that. There's some nice sites out there, and you can come back and look at this. There's several steps that you go through. And one of the things is at the bottom down here, you don't want to dig too deep of a hole, and then you want to compact it. You don't want a lot of airspace down there, because that's where disease can come into the new roots that you're putting in. And then when you layer it up, you can see that the mulch is placed on top, not near the trunk, but a little higher. And then so the water will come to and then come to the ball, but then it'll stay dry on top, because this is where disease can happen. So you don't want to end up with mulch packed around the tree trunk, and that's where it can get wet if you're watering there. So you water over here, not there, and let the water drain down into the root systems here. And especially in our adobe soils here, I live on the east side, lots of clay, and this is almost impermeable. You want to mix the soils in here when you plant a tree, so that give the roots as much chance as possible to enter in, and when you're watering, so the roots can expand out. You want to put, I like the 3 stakes when I can do it. I prefer 3 stakes rather than the 2-stake system. And this is a new product I just tried for using this cloth tape. Just a tiny bit of flexibility on it, but a really good support system for grabbing onto the tree. And then you can nail it in. So I'm now recommending this fabric tree tapes that are now available. Okay. Then mulching. When you're mulching the tree, wrong, do not pile it up around the trunk and then water it then. That tends to create problems and disease. You want to have a little bit of a dip in here and keep the mulch away from the base, sort of like a little tree well in here. And here's a good example of how to do it on this side here. There are some oak trees that we're recommending. Then this is the white oak family, the valley oak, blue oak, Oregon oak. And there's one that there is Oaktopia, which is a wonderful site. If you want to learn about oaks, there is someone down in Southern California created a site called Oaktopia. And that I've got that listed down later in the slideshow here, so you'll have that as a link. I think I'll send that later. But this new one, I haven't any experience with this. The Engelmann oak looks like an interesting with climate change happening, we may be wanting to bring in a couple species from Southern California. Up north a little bit, there's like 50 oak species out available, even Mexico, and start planting those and getting prepared for climate change. But these trees are very tolerant of for water and also sudden oak death. Okay, Petaluma, where are we at now with water? Stage 4, and it goes up to stage 6, more restrictive and more restrictive. We're almost stage 5. I think in stage 6 are going to say 0 water outdoors. Just hold water to yourselves. And right now we're at 30%, and those will go up to 40 and even 50% reductions from normal. And that's just for indoor use, even, not just total use. So we're now down to 2 times per week watering, basically Tuesdays and Saturday nights till the morning. You must have a hose end nozzle, so on your hose at all times, so you can shut it off in between. So if water one plant to the other, you have an ability to shut it off and not just splashing water over the sidewalk. That's actually illegal now. This is a mandate. You can actually be fined if someone turns you in. The city isn't doing that right now, but the law's in place, and the city does have the power. So if you're wasting water, the city can. And they're being really nice right now and being polite and saying, please help us. And they're not, as far as I know, they haven't fined anybody, but that's going to come next year if we end up another drought year. Water users are reminded to fix leaks. We have a whole municipal code that's part of that. So if you see a leak out there, you're under law restriction. You must go out there and fix it. No washing down the pavements at this time, washing down your vehicles. You can take it over and get your vehicles washed out in a car wash, which recycles their water and reuses their water and goes back to the water treatment plant, and that water gets recycled and is now being used. In fact, I think we're using most of the recycled water from our water treatment plant now. So no fountains anymore. They should be turned off. No spools and ponds, they should be turned off and just covered, and hopefully it'll minimize the evaporation. No topping off pools, no planting. Right now, they want no planting of existing landscapes unless you have, as I said, some gray water coming in. So just hold back on installations right now. Now, how to actually water the tree. So a lot of folks will just, in the beginning, this is how, when you first plant a young tree, many folks will put on a drip system. They'll have your 1/2-inch tube that runs around the landscape. Then they have a small tube, a little 1/4 inch tubing that'll head out to the tree. This can't be too long, 25 feet, absolute maximum total length, because you lose pressure at the end. These tubes are very narrow and the pressure does decline throughout the tube length. So 25 feet maximum, please. And probably in the range of 12-foot maximum. But I try to put my tubes right near the tree, and then you put little rings around the tree. And I put 6 to 8 the drippers. Now, if you use where little pinholes are in the line, those work really well. They do get clogged up over time and do need to be replaced after a couple of years because they do clog with small little particles. So you need to check, make sure every hole is working. But 6 to 8 of these holes around young trees. But as the tree gets larger and larger, you need to expand this ring out. I'm guilty. I have trees out there. I've put the little ring on, and then 10 years later, I've never gone back to do anything about it. It's just watering the tree. The trunk is now way too big. The ring is way too small, and the roots are way past where those drips are. The tiny little container that you put in, yes, it's there, but you got to move this out, and that's within 2 years. You got to move this out. And here's an example where this is a large. This is called tech line. And tech line has, you could have 6, 9, or 12-inch tech line where there's a little dripper, a little laser made hole. And these work really well over a long period of time. They don't clog as much as these smaller tubes do, but they do still clog over time and need to be checked. But this is a ring system that's put out, that's a full ring system, many rings. So as the tree gets old, larger and larger and older, you want to expand the ring system out as best you can. So this is a really nice one. Set up, and this, if you drip it down these things and drip it maybe even once a month and put it on for a half hour, whatever it takes. So 10 gallons per minute times 10 minutes, 100 gallons. This single tree gets 100 gallons once a month. Great. And it goes down deep. slow and deep, because that's where the water is stored. It evaporates off the top couple inches. You want your water down very, very deep, below 2 inches. Below 2 inches, it's not going to evaporate off as much, and it will be stored, and it's for the tree. That's where the tree likes it. The lawns love it in the top 1 or 2 inches. The trees love it when it gets down to 6 inches to 12 inches. That's where the trees want the water. There's a couple other watering systems in here. I've just installed a couple tree bags, and you get them off. Home Depot has them, the internet has them. And basically it's a bag you wrap around the trunk of the tree. You put, there's a hose you stick in the top up here, fill it with water. And there's tiny little holes, like a little drip system down here. And then over an hour or a day, depending upon the bag, which company, it will drip slowly down. And this is really good to keep your smaller trees going. And their systems can have even 2, or even you can wrap 2 or 3 bags around the larger trees. They're on zippers, and you can zip them together. This system the DeWitt system has zipper system. So you can get that and put, and then maybe, hey, once a week, once every 2 weeks, fill it up, let it drain down slowly, and then walk away, because that'll be a lot of deep water going down here. Another technique I heard that's really nice is just a 5-gallon pail. Now, some pails, specially purchased and specially built, has this tiny little rod that goes down that slow seepage that has tiny little holes in. But you do the same thing. Just drill a few tiny little holes at the bottom of a bucket, does the same thing. So put a bucket out there. You know this is 5 gallons. Fill it up. So once a week, you put it out there once a week. Fill it up. Let it drain out slowly, and which will go deep in that zone. Maybe put it on one side, then next week put it on the other side. But this is get your 5 to 10 gallons per week for a small tree. This system works out really. Then you know you've got a measurement. 5-gallon bucket works really well with little holes at the bottom. So watering trees, slow it, sink it. If you can fit your, like if you downspouts, if you have a downspout going on cement and the cement goes to the street and the street goes to the store, you're wasting water. Let's get that spout onto your landscape if you can. And if you can, put a little pond in there, put a little basin, catch that water, at least get 20, 30 gallons to sit there. And another little note, when you water your trees, especially when the first rains come and the trees are droughty and they're stressed, people don't know that 30% of a tree is water. Like we're like 80% water. Trees are over 30% water. And they can absorb 30, and within the first hour or two, rains come down into the soil and the trees are absorbing that first rainfall. They absorb huge amount of water. So that actually helps flooding, because the amount of water that trees are actually absorbing from the landscape directly, immediately, right in the beginning of heavy rains, that first 30 minutes. And they can store and they can pick up 30% of their weight in water. So trees are really good at storing water, and then they can hold it there for a long time. Signs of stress. I don't know if you saw the article a couple of weeks ago. There was a couple of pictures in the paper of yellow leaves, brown leaves, small leaves, cupped leaves, especially oak trees will cup up. Bare branches start appearing, especially near the small branches near the tops of the trees. These are the signs you've got stress, and your plant is hurting and suffering a little bit. And trees can take a lot of stress and come back. So I'm really hoping with these rains now, and maybe if we get rain this year, a lot of trees, all the trees will come back. Right now we have lots of trees really stressed, suffering. But slow, deep water helps. Where the drip line is, or even further out from the drip line. Young trees, I went over this 5, 10 gallons, larger trees, 30 gallons or 100 gallons per month on over time, if you can calculate that out. So mature trees, 10 to 15 gallons of water per inch of, this is another little value that's out there on the internet. If you go and look, 10 to 15 gallons of water per inch of trunk diameter at breast height, that's 4.5 feet up. And just measure the diameter across from one side to the other side. Just use a ruler, just kind of estimate what that is, and multiply the number of inches by 10, 15 gallons. And that's what you give the tree every 2 to 3 weeks. That's another way of rule of thumb that's used. Alternatively, you can get a larger tree, make your tree basins, expand them out, make it a little bit more of a pond around your trees, a little bit larger. Let's let it soak in, let it rain down. There's rain catchment systems that you use. I've built one. I've got a web. There's a video that I put on YouTube that I think you could look up. If you want to put a rain catchment system in, I've got a 500 gallon that I water all my precious plants with that water. You can use holes in buckets, slow release bags, various ways of doing that. We have various things, various instruments you can use. Hose bibs deliver 10 gallons per minute. Water saving hose, only 2 gallons per minute. So it takes a lot longer. So depending upon, maybe switch back to your old nozzle if you're going to water your trees and only your trees, and put a cutoff valve on it, water your trees and then move to the next tree. So save yourself some time. Otherwise, at 2 gallons per minute for these nozzles right here, it takes a little bit longer to put out the water. There's various types. Irrigation lines put out anywhere from 8 to 12 gallons per minute, depending upon if you have a 3/4 inch or maybe even a 1 inch line going directly from the main line to your irrigation line. So look at if you have sprays out there for a pattern, that gives you time values. If you have drip lines, drippers usually work in 1 or 2 gallons per hour per dripper. So you can do an hour. Oh, if you have 2 drippers and only 2 drippers on that tree, and it takes an hour to get a gallon of water out of each dripper, then you're going to need to have a long period of time for each of those drippers. So even in your lines, the small lines and tech lines, most of them put out about a gallon per hour per drip. That's both these types of drippers and also your tech lines, which have those little holes in it. That's about the average, about 1 gallon per hour per hole. So estimate how many drippers you have for that tree, and then how many gallons you're actually giving that tree with your irrigation system. That's one way of calculating it out. There's lots of resources out there. This will come in probably email. Connor said he's going to gather this and send that all out to you, participants here, so that you can see all these different ways to find out more information. For oak trees, Oaktopia is really good. LA, there's pictures in alphabetic order. LA has got a really wonderful urban forestry plan going, and they have lots of information down there. Petaluma has a drought page that you can go look at. Palo Alto is a leader in trees and tree care in urbans, and Canopy is a nonprofit down there that we're actually mimicking here right now. ReLeaf Petaluma is a brand new nonprofit. We're mimicking what they're going to do down there in Canopy in Palo Alto. They've been the leaders, and San Jose is another place leading in tree care in the urban environment. California ReLeaf is the California one, and they've got and they're Save Trees right here. Lots of good information on that, and in Spanish. So if anybody knows anybody that speaks Spanish and needs Spanish information, this particular site has all the information on watering trees in Spanish and available, ready to go. And then Save Water Petaluma is down here just for water conservation in general. And what you can do if you want to help. So first, take care of your own trees. There's lots of benefits to you and your neighbors. Take care of trees in your neighborhood. I help take care of the landscape assessment district across the street from me. And also I do community gardens, go out there and help. So go out there and help a tree somewhere. You can adopt a park, adopt a tree. And I think we're trying to start a new program here in ReLeaf Petaluma. A couple folks over in one park saying, hey, we're going to go out and water some trees out there and help. And just have to coordinate with the city a little bit. So there's a possibilities there if you want to go out there and help and just take, especially if it's droughty again, next summer is going to be really severe. Then we're going to have a lot of help to take care of our trees. You can ReLeaf Petaluma wants to plant 10,000 trees in our city over the next 5 years. Daily Acts have already been planting trees and things out there. So please join in and volunteer for all their work. We have several community gardens. Go out there and help out there. You can be a block captain in Cool Cities initiative. There's like almost 400, I think, now signed up here in our city. We're heading toward a grant, I'm hoping, and work with them to plant trees here. You can be a tree steward with ReLeaf Petaluma for your blocks as part of being a block captain and help support your neighborhood. There was 10,000 tree initiative when we're just starting that. So it's just going to be over a 5-year period. What we can do is we're just planning it, getting it started now. I'm also chair of the Tree Advisory Committee. Come talk to us. Come give us your information. Do some volunteer work with us. We have Arbor Day coming up here in April, May area. So please join in and plant some trees in Arbor Day.
Hey, John, just to do
yes.
a quick time check. We're at 6:15, so we're running a little low on time.
Okay.
I'm wondering if we either want to move through the fire section really quickly or even bypass it. We do have some really great, we can send this as the follow-up. I just want to make sure we get to folks' questions before they have to log off. Okay, I'll do this real quick, just as a difference between rural versus urban. The best thing you can do, fire comes in different ways. Protect your house. It's more important than your trees is protecting your house. And there's many things you can do with your house, whether your roof, your windows, your eaves, protecting the house.
directly from fire and from the embers coming into your house. That's where the source of fires come in, both in rural and especially in urban fires, not from the trees. It's coming from embers floating in with the wind. That's protect your trees that way. There's more information here on that. And then there's the rural folks are saying defensible space. That doesn't apply as much to the urban area, but one thing is you're 5 feet. 5 feet from your house, keep all your vegetation 5 feet away from your roofs, 5 feet away. So if you do have a tree that's within 5 feet or limbs within 5 feet of the house, clear 5 feet around your house in the urban environment. So if that's one thing you can do for fire protection here in the urban. Annette, more than 5 feet, hey, we're right on top of each other. And more than 5 feet, you're in your neighbor's yard. Again, it's just protecting your house. Here's a site. You can later take a look at the slideshow. Maybe they'll show it to you later. You can come back here. Many different ways for your house. And here's some sites for your fire preparedness. Here's resources, defensible space to look at. These are the main ideas I'm going to throw back at you that I had at the very front. We'll leave these up. And it's time for questions, comments, and suggestions. And I'm going to leave this up for the moment, let you think about these things, and then let's have some audience participation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. We had a couple questions that came in during the presentation in the chat, so I think it'd be good to start there. So we had a question from Gail. We kind of covered this, but she's wondering how much water her citrus trees and a young dogwood should get, how often. So I guess the way to frame this would be, is there any special consideration for citrus trees compared to the general guidelines you gave us here with young trees and large trees?
Okay, so citrus trees are pretty much going to be more generic, good trees. They have pretty thick leaves. They're very waxy leaves if you really feel them. And they're very protective against water, and they're used to drought. They're growing in Mediterranean climates, so they're used to warmer climates. So they're actually pretty in good shape for drought compared to other trees. So water them just like any other tree. So if you have young trees, as I said, it's 5 to 10 gallons a week per tree, up to 30 or 100 gallons per month for very large trees. But those trees probably not in the very large shade tree area, more to the younger trees. Now the dogwood is a little different. The dogwood is a leaves, especially if you look at leaves, if they are thin, not so much wax coating, they're very broad, especially if they're used to being under shade. The more they're in the shade and riparian, the more riparian they are, the larger the leaves, the thinner the leaves, the less wax there is, the more drought tolerant they're not. So you got to give them a little bit more water. So dogwoods, you got to increase your water. Again, hey, use lots of gray water if you can, and water those a little bit more, because those are going to be a little bit more susceptible to dry conditions. And right now, if you notice with the rains, hopefully, maybe you don't have to do so much right now. With the rains coming in, it'll be a really big help right now. We may be able to wait. If your tree is suffering, let it go and wait till, don't take it out yet. And the way you check, you see if there was a question of living dead, is my tree dead? Let it, leaves fall. Trees will actually accommodate. Leaves will fall down. And when they fall down, that's sort of like, okay, I'm going to get ready. I'm preemptive. I know it's droughty. I'm dry. I'm going to let go of some of my leaves. I'm going to let go of some of the branches, but I'm going to keep my heartwood. I'm here ready to go when it rains come. So let them drop their leaves and then continue on through the winter. And then in the spring, check the leaves. Where are the buds? You can check, you can break, you can feel the flexibility. If it's stiff or is it flexible? Is it brown? Are the buds brown or are they green? And there's a way of checking for the flexibility and the health of even if the bare branches. Feel them. Do they flex a little bit? As long as they flex a little bit and feel it, and you can even take the deadwood down and look at it. Is it green? And the cambium layer, is it a little bit of green? And do a check on one branch and see how well it's doing. That's a good way of checking its health. It says, okay, is it really dry down there in that branch, or is it green somewhere in the cambium layer? So check your trees before you prune them or think that it's dead. Let them go. See if they come out. Trees are wonderful recoverers. Okay, next question.
We had a question from Reg. Reg, I don't know if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question about protecting pipes. Otherwise, I can read it.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing if that's okay, so I can see people.
Sure.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Right.
we can hear you.
Oh yeah. So I had a couple questions. The first one was just Well, let me ask the second one first. I think that one's more pertinent. What is the risk? What's the fire risk of bark mulches that we may place around trees? Do we need to be worried about that?
For the most part, the bark mulches, as long as they're not too deep, that's one of the hazards. The other one is like disease gets in, also weed seeds get in. But bark mulch is overall, as long as it's low and on the ground, fine, and 5 feet away directly from your building. So in case it does catch fire, it's hot enough so they do catch fire. All the fire departments I looked at and the recommendations is that 5 foot away from any wood structure in your house, if you either roofs or siding. I wouldn't worry about the mulch from getting on fire. It's more the upper limbs because mulch on the ground is especially if when you mow. The reason why they mow is to get the upright portions of plants, even a foot tall, laid on the ground. When it's tall, lots of oxygen around it, a lot hotter fire happens. When they're laid on the ground, there's a lot less air in that mass. So when the fire starts, it's not going to be as hot. So mulch on the ground, I'm not worried about it all.
Okay, thanks. And then quickly, the other question was, any tips for protecting sewer pipes from tree roots? I had a couple years back, the sewer lateral was intruded upon by a neighbor's tree roots from like 50 feet away.
Yeah, tree roots will go far, especially, and willow trees are famous for searching out water pipes and finding a little crack and getting into them. There's not much you can do, just bury your pipes. The recommendation for the rule is 18 inches for normal irrigation pipes to go through. And if most of the roots are in the top foot, then that should be below a lot of the roots, and that's also for digging. But there's not a whole lot you can do. Is just some folks you can put like if you're really concerned, sometimes there's a little when you put in a French drain, there's a little wrapping you put around it that keeps the both the soil and roots out of your drain, the French drain system. And you can do that with your irrigation system. So if you're going to repair, once you repair it, I said, while you're repairing it, you can put a little, what's called a little drainage sock over that little section so it doesn't happen again. Putting in root barriers, maybe for sidewalks here and there, if you're really, I don't even recommend root barriers where you put a physical 12-inch, like a metal plate or plastic plate now in the ground to try to protect that. Roots get around those things way too easily.
Thank you.
Kathleen, you still have a question you'd like to ask? I see that you're still here. I can ask you to unmute there. Well, question was, how do you correct roots in a container that have been wrapped too tightly before you plant the tree in the ground? Okay,
so if you bought this from a nursery, so one of the things you can do is you can take it back and say, please give me a tree that's not wrapped up. But if they are a little bit wrapped up, and what I've done is just physically one by one, very gently unwrap them. I've actually, when I see a mass, especially at the bottom, I actually chop off a lot of the roots on the bottom. I'll actually just chop those right off. And then pull that bottom part, it just comes up. You can use your fingers up here and just kind of tease it all apart a little bit around the edges. And so so loosen it up. So at least give the roots a direction. Instead of going around this way, they'll come out. And so by just doing that, teasing the roots out gently, because that is going to damage the roots a little bit, but I think that's going to be helpful. And then you can plant your tree in the ground.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Betsy, Tim, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, hi. We're in Santa Rosa, central Santa Rosa West, and we have clay soil, but it's been amended for over 30 years in almost every place. My question is that we have a fig tree that's over 30 years old in the back, and in the front, 2 tree lawn trees. And we purchased a 16-inch probe to measure the moisture. And we found that all of them down at 16 inches or 12 inches had a moisture level of 6 to 10. So, they weren't in stress. So my question, and this is without all of the stuff you've been talking about, watering specifically around trees, which is an enormous amount of water. I'm just shocked. But, you know, are we doing okay just with watering around them with other stuff? And in some cases, we have hardly been watering at all.
Yeah, the two concepts here is use as much gray water as possible, because I'm using all my sink water, my shower water. I'm collecting it all for all the critical plants.
We do part of that. We do part of that.
And then reducing the water down. So lawns, some folks are on every day. They were watering their lawns and trees, and the whole irrigation every day that was on, and down to twice a week. And then the idea is to move it from cut it back. Let's say you cut back 50% or even 75% from your irrigation system, but instead of a little bit every day, water once every 2 weeks, and put on the same amount of water every 2 weeks. So get it down deeper. And that's when your soil probe, that's where you want your water. Is that 60 inches down where it's more moist? That's where the trees like the water. And then for your other, the stuff that's around your trees, the other thing is just, if you're just mulching alone, that's still not as good as having living plants with down there also, because then you have a lot more organisms that are going to be living in the soil and increasing the whole ecology of the soil underneath. So mulch is okay. That's better than bare ground, but actually living some shrubs, drought resistant shrubs and the like, California natives, along with your trees is even better.
Okay, but so a reading of 10 down at the clay level, so to speak, I think is you're saying is that's good, right?
Assuming your scale is 1 to 10 or 1 to 15.
Yeah, it's 1 to 10.
Yes. Yeah. If your scale is 1 to 100, I'd be worried.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Ellen, I saw you had a question in the chat. Would you like to ask that?
Yeah. Let me put my
You want to show your
video. Yeah, here I am. Last year I removed I don't know, probably about a 25-year-old Allianthus. And we took it down with a stump grinder, but it's been suckering all over the yard. I have a kind of a city-sized lot. I'm in Oakmont. And my question about all these suckers, which I'm diligently pulling out as soon as I spot them, is how much the root system that's still in the ground from the Allianthus, given that it's suckering so much, how much of that is taking away from other trees that I have in my yard? Because I have an oak nearby, I have a graywood ash nearby, and then a lot of other shrubs, native shrubs.
Okay, so what you've got is trees naturally propagate. Many trees do this, particularly willow trees are famous for, you take even a stem and you toss it into the river and it grows back, just laying on the ground. It'll send down roots and a shoot from a stick. And what you've done is remove the main plant and the main, even the stump ground, remove that, but large roots underground, that's still a huge carbon source, and lots of energy is in these roots. So it's going to try and survive, because life loves survival. Life will find a way, and it will come back up as long as you keep pulling those suckers off or cutting them off or pulling them out. And just make sure those are suckers and not seedlings. If you pull them out directly, it's easy to pull out. Those are probably seedlings from seeds that are still floating around. But if they're really hard to pull out and they're connected to something larger down underneath, those would be the suckers. And your root will eventually, it's going to take some time, but that roots, if it's a large root mass, if they've got a couple 100 pounds or even 1,000 pounds of root mass underground, that's 1,000 pounds of wood of energy that can be sending stuff up continuously. But it's probably not stealing that much, because suckers, they're small, they're not transferring all that much, and they're not stealing that much. They're using the roots. So that's removing energy out of the root system, but you're not stealing from the general environment overall. Just keep pulling those suckers out, and eventually it will go away.
Great, thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions? If so, feel free to just unmute and share your question with us.
I went through a huge amount of information. Hopefully everybody's pretty happy with what I've thrown at you. I love to talk about, but I talk really fast. So hopefully you got it.
And just a reminder, we will be sending the recording of this event out to you in a follow-up email, along with all the resources that John mentioned, all those great links. So some of those information heavy, like infographic slides, you'll be able to look at in detail. You can rewind and check back on anything you think you may have missed. That'll come in the next few days.
And I'm glad everyone is here. We all love trees. Trees are wonderful.
Truly. Yeah. Thank you so much, John.
I had a final question here. We have a tree, it's a California live oak, coast oak, I believe, and it looks for all intents and purposes to be dead.
Okay, he just cut off, but
How do we tell if it's dead or alive?
okay, how do you tell? So first, give it some time, because even if the branches on the outside may look dead, oak trees have fantastic recovery. So give it the whole winter and wait till the spring, and then see if it sprouts back out again. So don't assume it is dead. If the branches are turned brown and they actually die back, yes, you can chop those off. But just watch. I'd say right now, trees are looking stressed, but watch and wait. Don't go out there and chop down your tree just because it's looking stressed and might be dead. Wait, please wait till next spring.
And should we be watering it according to your instructions, even though
No,
it appears dead?
Watering is only for trees that are already transpiring, and the leaves have the ability to put out water to transpire, and transpiration actually draws the water from the soil and brings it in. So it's got to have leaves in order to draw water in. So if the leaves are all gone, I'd say right now, cut off the water entirely and just let it sit and wait and see what happens. The recent rains that we're getting now will be enough to carry it through the winter, at least to get it through.
Great, thank you.
How much gray water can one use before you really should be using some tap water to kind of wash it?
Okay, if you look at the amount of contaminants in gray water, for the most part, we're talking about maybe parts per thousands, parts per hundreds at most even. And if you look at soil, and soil is basically billions of parts per unit of mass, the amount of stuff you're putting on is totally minimal compared to the amount of soil mass you have. And also the soil chemistry. Soil chemistry is wonderful. So if you've got a living soil, it can absorb and break down anything, any gray water you can put on it. And more or less like you're fertilizing a little bit. I've seen recycled plant water go on cornfields, and corn is grows twice as fast. And this is straight pure. And I use straight pure recycled water from the water treatment plant. I had a native plant nursery at Casa Grande High School for 10 years. And so I was on recycled water 100% in containers the entire time for the entire life, and they loved it. The only problem is in gray water. I think Daily X could talk a lot more about this at their webinars. It's the oils in the sink. When you're pouring stuff down the sink and doing things, and there's things, then oils may have an impact on soils. But if it's normal, just rinse water, or even soapy, like I take all my soapy water and I just pour it on and it's fine. I don't think you have to worry about it. The soap is actually good for the soil. It actually helps the penetration of the soil. And so for my container pots, a little bit of soapy water is pretty good for containers.
Okay.
In fact, they use for soils, one of the things they add, molasses is really good for soil health. Some folks have promoted that, and I've read some good articles that applying a small amount of molasses over some soil feeds the soil organisms quite a bit and actually increases the health of your soil.
I've never heard that before. That's fascinating.
So yeah, so I'm okay with, and now if you have laundry soap, now when you start having laundry soap going out the same spot, going to the same tree constantly, and you have laundry soap, that you have to be careful with your laundry soaps. That's another little caveat, but But I'm gonna leave that to Daily Acts because they have whole programs on how to do that.
Yeah, in fact, we have one this coming Thursday about laundry to landscape gray water. The main thing to keep in mind if you're using laundry water is you want to minimize or avoid borax, sodium, and any kind of bleach products, because those will not be very friendly to the soil and your plants and your landscape.
Yeah, and then like your high phosphates, detergents type things like that, that's adding too many salts maybe in there. But dish soap, for the most part, I'm not worried about the little bit of dish soap that you might use because it gets mostly bound with all the food particles. And what is compost? Compost is just food that's been composted. So putting food on the top of the landscape, or it's the same as putting leaves on top of the landscape, it's all organic, it all breaks down. Earthworms love it. Give it plenty.
We use Oasis brand, which for both dishes, there's one variety for dishes and one for laundry, and it was created for gray water.
Right.
Oasis.
Oasis is a great option.
Yeah, you don't want to use detergent. That's soap versus detergent.
Right. Because detergents have the phosphate salts in it and other salts for help binding with things, and those can be a problem over time.
All right, well, if we don't have any further questions, I have just a couple wrap-up slides. I want to be mindful of people's time. We are past 6:30, so if you have to run, no hard feelings, but just a couple of closing slides to show you a bit of what Daily Acts has coming up in the next few weeks. Oh, didn't mean to start at the beginning. Okay. So as I just mentioned, we have parts 2 and 3 of our 3-part Gray Water webinar series with expert Laura Allen. She is a wonderful and knowledgeable presenter. So part 2 this Thursday, we're going to be talking about designing your laundry to landscape systems. And then next Thursday, we're going to be going into some of the less DIY friendly permitted gray water systems. So if you were interested in, having a contractor route your bath water or your bathroom sink water out to your landscape, this would be the webinar you would want to check out. So again, those are these coming Thursdays at 6 p.m. We also are doing a Soil Health 101 webinar. That'll be with myself and Corey, my colleague who's on the call, Thursday, November 4th with the City of Petaluma, talking about what makes healthy soil, why that's important, and how you can start to build or grow healthy soil. And then we also are hosting a rain barrel rain harvesting system with Jesse Savo, who is the founder of Blue Barrel Systems, which is a Santa Rosa-based company that distributes all over the place. Another impressively knowledgeable and experienced expert in the field of creative water systems. So that would be one not to miss if you're interested in catching rain off of your roof and either routing it into an irrigation system or watering by hand, whatever suits your context best. So that's going to be on the 9th, Tuesday, November 9th at 5:30. And we're also looking for a bilingual programs coordinator, specifically English and Spanish. If you are that person or you know someone who you think would be a good fit, please get in touch or put them in touch with us. Of course, always a big shout out to our wonderful sponsors. Our program tonight was brought through the City of Petaluma, but we also get a lot of support from our sponsors and from donations from the community. So if you feel called, if you like the work that we do and you'd like to see more of it, we invite you to make a donation through our website. And of course, if you have any lingering questions or, we get off the call and you think, oh, I wanted to ask this one thing about trees, you can email myself or Corey at any time. We'll do our best to either answer your question or direct you to someone who can. And just to close with a note of gratitude, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you again to John for such a educational and wonderful presentation. We hope that you can keep your trees alive and help join the efforts to improve tree canopy and tree health across our beautiful county. And with that, we'll just say goodnight. Hope to see you at another event soon. Take care, everybody.
Should we stay on?
We can, usually we'll do just like a 2 or 3 minute little debrief. But we can always hop on another call. I can send a link out in a second.